Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Monday, November 7th, 2022. It's, a day before Election Day, if that even applies to people's thinking anymore. It's not the day we start voting. It's not the day we stop voting. I guess it's the day we stop voting, but it's not the day we stop counting the votes. It's now like a month-long event. Election month. You're voting sometimes for even more than that in early voting, and counting votes, well, that can go into January. Sometimes. Even legitimately, it can go into January. Well, I don't know how long it's going to take us this time. I don't know if we'll make it all the way to January. I don't know what to tell you about it, except go and vote if you haven't. Although in most states, early voting is now over, and they take the day off beforehand. So if you haven't voted, make sure you do vote. If you have voted, I don't know what. Quit Twitter or buy Twitter or do something with your time in between now and the vote counting, and we'll hang on and see what happens. And I think I can confidently predict that there will be 24 or more Republican candidates for Congress who will contest the results of tomorrow's counting. I guess that's the only thing I can call it. Plus what little voting there is left to do. And we'll see how long that lasts and whether any of it holds up. And the judges not looking forward to the counting process in the months to come, I'm sure. Let's see. And enjoying all of this, though, the Russians apparently having a great time, because apparently they are openly admitting their election interference this time around. That, according to a Reuters dispatch, which I have standing ready to share with you. Although, I don't know how much. I guess if I were a Russian intelligence operative, I would release a story saying that I am absolutely interfering in your elections, so that everybody would be inclined not to trust the outcome of the election, no matter where you are on the political spectrum. So maybe it's just that. And maybe the best interference plan at this point is simply to announce that you're interfering, whether you're interfering or not. So I don't know. I'll hold that for now in abeyance, and we'll perhaps come back to that unless that's something that Greg wants to discuss. Wild weekend with the new owner of Twitter, I guess. Elon Musk has gotten to the point where somebody, I think, put it very well last night, and I think somewhere I can retrieve the actual tweet so that we can figure out who it was that actually said it. It was very clever. Here it is. Kenneth, who tweets as Disaster Laster, whatever that might mean, who says, Elon Musk right now is like if Elmer Fudd bought a website of Bugs Bunnies. And I think that was an apt description of what was going on over the weekend. Everybody figured out over the weekend that because of the way Twitter works, you have a permanent address handle, the @ sign, and then your whatever you put after it. In our case, Kagro X. Our case is the royal we here we're talking. And but the name that displays on the screen is changeable, and I have my real name with a bunch of other old inside Twitter jokes now appended to all of that. But what that means is, of course, that people can change the display name on the screen to Elon Musk, change their picture, their avatar, to a picture of Elon Musk, and in particular the one he's using for his own Twitter account at the moment, and then go around tweeting all sorts of things that at first glance look like they have come from Elon Musk, even though they haven't if you actually look at the address, the handle of the person who has sent the tweet. But apparently it's enough to confuse people, fool people, or make people laugh at Elon Musk. Any one of those things will do at this point. But I guess more detrimental to Elon himself is that a lot of the external function of Twitter, besides what you see displayed on your Twitter platform, whatever you're using, whether it's the web-based reader or anything of the other third-party readers that are out there. But I happened to see something that was funny. Somebody has notifications turned on Twitter. I don't know who does that. My phone would just be ringing off the hook constantly, so I don't have the notifications turned on. But if you're not a heavy Twitter user, or you're just looking for notifications of one person's tweet, whatever. Anyway, people have it set up, and they reported seeing on their iPhones notification that a tweet had been made by somebody that they're following, but it was somebody who was using the fake Elon Musk name, but it doesn't differentiate. It doesn't show you which @ address actually tweeted the thing in the little, iPhone alert thing. So up on his phone comes the alert that Elon Musk is tweeting the following, and I don't remember which joke thing it was, but it was one of the many things that Elon Musk probably wouldn't want attributed to his name coming up on his screen, and presumably on the screens of millions of Twitter and iPhone users around the country, which was very funny. Sarah Silverman had her own unique take on it, and said things that were unlikely to be mistaken for actual Elon Musk tweets, but were funny nonetheless. Yeah. Oh, yes. Right. Although this one was unlikely to be mistaken for an actual Elon Musk tweet as well. Matt Binder was the one who brought this to our attention, that his iPhone said, brings up a tweet that says Elon Musk tweets, Grimes never said I had a weird male appendage, let's say, and, quote, smelled like nachos. And if you, and then ellipsis, it trails off at that point. And I'm sure that she didn't say that. But then the tweet goes on to say, if you repeat this, you'll be arrested. And so Elon Musk spent the weekend trying to come up with ways to prohibit people from pretending to be Elon Musk and tweeting these weird things, which is, of course, you'll recall that just about 10 seconds ago, Elon Musk spent $44 billion, although the structure of the deal is somewhat odd, and I don't know how much of it is his money, and that matters in a certain way, but not here for these purposes. Elon Musk spent $44 billion to take over Twitter to make it a free speech haven, and he was a free speech absolutist, more or less, and that he was going to free everybody. All the people who had been banned from the platform were going to come back and could exchange their views free of fear of censorship, et cetera, et cetera. And I think at some point he even said, humor is finally allowed back on Twitter, or whatever wording he used for it. And then, of course, people using their sense of humor to poke fun at a powerful rich guy. There's now a new rule at Twitter that if you change your name to Elon Musk, you get banned. So much for the no banning thing, and the humor is back, and the free speech thing. But I think we all knew that it was unlikely that a person like Elon Musk was really going to stick to that sort of pledge. It was really about he gets to have free speech. People he thinks are fun and interesting should have free speech. People that poke fun at him should shut up and go away. And there we are. So a couple of people, I guess, have had their accounts indefinitely suspended for having changed their name to Elon Musk. I'm not certain. No word whether he's in on the trick of changing your name to Eon Musk, spelled E-I-O-N, but using a capital I so that it looks like a lowercase l, so that it looks like Elon Musk, but isn't. And I'm sure he has bots looking for E-L-O-N. And does he have bots looking for E-I-O-N yet? I don't know. If you feel like risking your account, you can go ahead and do that. At any rate, fun weekend finding out that he's a big baby, and I think we all knew that, and whatever. So that's the future of the biggest town square going, heading into the elections, along with an admission from the Russians that may or may not be fake, that they are openly hoping to interfere with tomorrow's balloting, or whatever it is we'll call it, the election, this 2-month-long process that we've engaged ourselves in. Speaking of month-long, two-month-long, and too-long processes, Greg has entered the chat, and I haven't let him say anything. I'm looking for a way to segue around to saying, good morning, Greg, how are you?
Good morning.
I've done it.
But if it's too long and you didn't listen, hi.
Hi, right. It's easy that way. I mean, that's a lot of letters. And there's a limit.
This whole Twitter thing with Musk, I mean, it's interesting because one of his supporters
yes.
came on and said, there'll be no impersonations And obviously, this
What is
guy
it?
and Musk and everybody else doesn't understand the difference between parody and free speech and what you can and can't do
Yeah.
based on the First Amendment. And, of course, he doesn't care. The point is when you're rich enough to buy Twitter as a plaything and then you use it as your toy,
Yes.
you get to write the rules as you go along. This is the Uber example of, if you have the gavel, you make the rules.
Yeah, I guess so.
So, everybody's allowed free speech except anybody making fun of me, I will ban.
That's pretty much what it's come down to. I think then he sort of tinkered with the rules a little bit and said, well, if you have something that clearly says you're a parody account, that would be okay. And also then he said the rule is you can't change your screen name at all or you'll get in trouble. And then, but people
the guy
change
can't
it
tell
all the
the
time
difference between
for
parody
Halloween.
and parasite, obviously.
Yeah, it's really pretty incredible. And honestly, it's among the problems, besides all the problems he brings to the table, that all the banks and whatever other financial institutions kicked in money to make this purchase possible are only now finding out he has no idea how this product works.
Well, not just that. I think, and this segues into election discussion.
Oh, good.
Which we'll eventually get to.
I knew we were going to do that.
But it's the advertisers
Yes.
that make money for Twitter. They're the customer.
Yeah.
The people like us who are on Twitter chatting with each other, we make product.
That's true.
We're not the customer. The customer is the advertisers. And advertisers hate, let me emphasize this, hate, despise, loathe, fear controversy.
That's true. And the way that manifests itself in media is we need to have some assurance that our ads aren't going to appear next to crazy or weird content.
But
can you do that for us?
Also why places like MSNBC and CNN both sides everything. Mm-hmm. Because the advertisers don't want to feel like they're taking sides. The whole thing about advertising, and people like Donnie Deutsch who do this for a living will tell you, is what you're trying to do is create a brand, and you're supposed to feel good about the brand. Apple competent interfaces that make it easy for people to use and so on and so forth. And what they want is to put their advertising in a place where you happen to already be feeling good. So, if you have a nice, a sitcom, or if you have a music video that's like a feel-good sort of thing, don't worry, be happy kind of. That's where Disney wants to advertise. They don't want to advertise on Breaking Bad. It doesn't go
People
with the
do,
brand.
Yeah. Others do.
Others
Who does
do,
advertise on that, by the way?
Depending upon who you are, you may or may not wish this.
Right.
So the point is, if Musk is going to chase advertisers away, and so many have already pulled out because they don't like what he's doing, not because advertisers have an increased moral sense compared to anything,
Yes.
used car salesmen. No, it's because they're worried about their brand reputation. And that's what they're trying to preserve. Now, that happens, again, with advertisers when they dabble in politics or wind up on networks or shows which may be political. So that's one of the reasons why those networks and shows are always being pressured by their sponsors to try to be, reasonably not so one-sided or another-sided. And that's how, you get trouble on cable TV. If you have a view and it's strong and you express it, the advertisers are going to get upset. Not so much the suits in the C-suite, as they like to say, the suits and skirts. They will get upset if the advertisers get upset. But if the advertisers aren't upset and they sort of like it, the suits and skirts will go along with it.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It's a good point. That's chiefly what's driving it, and I'm not sure how much of that he understands.
What you think or I think or any of the people who are making fun of him think.
No,
and he thinks he does because he thinks he's doing this I'm above it all until the advertisers get involved.
Yeah, well.
And then he notices that he's just spent a whole bunch of money on something that's losing money, and then he gets upset. And so he fires everybody and then realizes that if you want to set up a bot that will recognize the difference between Elon L and E capital ION, then you need somebody who really knows what they're doing, and he doesn't, and the people at Tesla don't, and so now he has to hire him back.
Yeah, and it will make a difference. And the Tesla thing, he's toying with that now, screwing that up. I think his big plan was, he's very much like Donald Trump in this sense. His big plan, well, part of his big plan was, I'll fire all the engineers and coders at Twitter because I already have engineers and coders at Tesla, and I'll just give them the assignment of fixing Twitter, to which I think several million Tesla shareholders may eventually say, no, you won't. We're paying for those engineers and coders. I don't own any Twitter stock, and I don't care to. You can't just take the employees I'm loaning you money to pay for and move them elsewhere. And Musk is thinking, but I own these people. They work for me. I can move them between companies.
Catch on fire. Now you want to, set fire to Twitter too with the same people. That's
apparently, yeah. Now that's another reason not to maybe bring them over. In addition to, I don't know, I kind of understand cars, but not necessarily this. Maybe there's some applicable skills, whatever. Maybe
widgets
it's perfect.
And widgets are the same. I'm a widget CEO. I'll just move over to that company that makes widgets, and everything I learned about the first thing I could just apply to the second because it's all
even
the
if
same
that were actually true, it's not the case that these people aren't your vassals. They work for Tesla, and it's paid for by the investors in Tesla, and they don't care about what happens to Twitter. So you can't just take those people after taking money from people for the purpose of running Tesla and say, I'm going to run Twitter with it. It doesn't work it works like that for you because it's your money, invested in lots of things, I guess, and it's fungible to you, but not to everybody else. And you're going to get sued. And I know you don't care about that because you have $1 bazillion, but you really didn't think about this. And neither did the banks that loaned him the money. And eventually they're going to have to say, we have to get serious about this. We need to call these loans.
We're going to take a 50,000-foot view of this. And I'm going to refer to a lady who actually, unlike me, knows what she's talking about. Her name is Casey Fiesler, and she's a information specialist at Colorado University, computing, info science, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Also versed in tech ethics and law and the internet. And as she says, I maxed out my stats in geek.
Yeah, okay. That's true.
Right.
Sounds like it.
You've reached a new level. And now opinion unlocked. So Casey Fiesler says, listen, my personal enthusiasm for giving Mastodon a shot, which is another platform that people have been talking about trying to migrate to. I've played with it. It's very clunky. And it's not Twitter. And she says, I want to make sure folks understand it enough to try it if they want to. And people who have heard about Mastodon may find the next few minutes interesting. And if not, it's only a few minutes. Has not changed my opinion on this. It's not going to be the new Twitter because there will not be a new Twitter. And she wrote a nice article about mass migration of social sites. And she says, over the course of the next 48 hours after Musk announced the bird is freed, I saw countless announcements on my Twitter feed from people either leaving the platform or making preparations to leave. The hashtags Goodbye Twitter, Twitter Migration, and Mastodon were trending. The decentralized open source social network Mastodon gained over 100,000 users in just a few days, according to a user counting bot. So as an information scientist who studies online communities, this felt like the beginning of something I've seen before. Social media platforms tend not to last forever. Depending upon your age, depending upon your online habits. Hey, listen, you may remember Daily Kos the blog. There's probably some platform that you miss, even if it still exists in some form, like MySpace, LiveJournal, Google+, Vine.
AOL.
When Netscape Navigator. When social media platforms fall, remember the well? Sometimes the online communities that made their homes there fade away, and sometimes they pack the bags and relocate. So the turmoil at Twitter is causing many of the company's users to consider leaving the platform, and I haven't, and I probably won't, for a variety of reasons. Research on previous social media platform migration shows what might lie ahead for Twitter users who fly the coop. Several years ago, I led a research project where we mapped the platform migrations of nearly 2,000 people over almost 2 decades, and the community we examined was transformative fandom, fans of literary and popular culture series and franchises who create art using the characters and settings. We chose it because it's a large community. It's thrived. Some of the same people writing Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan fiction were writing Harry Potter fan fiction later in a different decade, Star Wars fan fiction even later than that. And they used Usenet and then LiveJournal and then Tumblr. So it was a useful group of people to follow. And by asking participants about their experiences moving across the platforms, why they left, why they joined, we gained insights into factors that might drive the success and failure of platforms, as well as what negative consequences are likely to occur for a community when it relocates. Firstly, regardless of how many people decide to leave Twitter, and even how many people do, the migrations are in large part driven by network effects, meaning the value of a new platform depends upon who else is there.
Yes.
So like if all the people you follow haven't left Twitter, there's no reason for you to leave Twitter.
That's true.
In a nutshell.
Right.
Plus,
or in
it's
anything else.
never going to be the same. What might actually happen if a lot of Twitter users do decide to leave? What makes Twitter Twitter isn't the technology. It's a particular configuration of interactions that takes place there. And there's essentially a zero chance that Twitter, as it exists now, could be reconstituted on some other platform. Any migration is likely to face many of the challenges previous platform migrations have faced: content loss, fragmented community, broken social network, and shifted community norms. But Twitter isn't one community. It's a collection of many communities. So some may be able to migrate more successfully than others. Maybe K-pop Twitter could coordinate a move to Tumblr. Academic Twitter may go to Mastodon. Other communities might already simultaneously exist on Discord and subreddit. Yes. And migrations always have a cost. And even for smaller communities, some people will just get lost along the way.
That will happen.
You could see that, interestingly enough, in the way people joke about Mastodon, which again is a very clunky thing. There's no one server. They use different language to try to indicate what's what. For example, it's not a tweet, it's a toot. And you don't retweet, you boost. And you pick a server to belong to, and there's like 30 different servers. And you can talk to anybody on some other server, but instead of living in the city, you're now each living in a gated community. So here's some things people have said about it, which I collected for the show because I just thought it was interesting. Mike Scott writes, Mastodon is basically your mom saying, we don't need to spend good money on expensive Twitter. I'll just knit you one.
Okay.
Right. Every explanation of Mastodon makes me feel like I'm at a party and somebody wants to play their elaborate card game, but everybody's too drunk.
All right.
Right. Suggesting Mastodon to most people as a Twitter replacement is like if you ordered steak at a restaurant and the waiter handed you the map to a cow pasture and a bolt gun.
All right. Seems
you
like
have
more
to
work.
build it yourself. You have to pick your server. You have to figure out how to sign in. You have to figure out where everybody else is. And none of that is simple. None of it. And that's why it's not really a replacement for Twitter.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, the simplicity, there will be a lot of people who just will refuse to navigate that and others who can't. But, yeah, all right. I could see how that could be complicated. But I think the idea originally, I don't think they were building themselves as a Twitter replacement, so that's one thing. But it could work that way. But I think that as I understood it, the idea was all these different servers was to sort of decentralize the thing so that it isn't something that someone can swoop in and buy and undo. It's,
I mean, it's a feature, not a bug. Another feature and not a bug is the fact that whatever they do on that particular platform has to be not illegal in France and Germany.
Oh, all right. That's a good measure.
And up front, what does that mean? No Nazis.
Right. That's great.
It's illegal.
Well, they had the right idea there.
It isn't a question of, I'm going to argue about what's free speech or not. No, it's illegal in Germany. You can't do it.
Awesome.
No discussion.
They don't have that rule, or not the same one about free speech being okay for Nazis over there. No, they had their experience with them. If you wanted to be a Nazi in Germany, you missed your chance.
And what happens is, let's say on Twitter, for example, and I'm probably a good example of this.
All right.
Who do I follow on Twitter? I follow political people. I think people who are funny. I follow academics. I follow doctors. I follow specialists in various and sundry things that I just sort of think are interesting, historians, et cetera, medieval historians who are different than U.S. historians. And each one of those groups may have a different group that they migrate to, let's say, over at Mastodon, each with their own individual server. And so how do you find out people are going to Mastodon? Because the doctors I follow say they're going there, and they'll be on the doctor Mastodon. And, the historians are going to be on the historian Mastodon, which is different. And then the political people will be over here, and it's different. And so you have to pick a place. Once you pick a place, you can talk to everybody else, but you're not automatically notified about what's going on in those other places. So you have to pick one place to live. You can't simultaneously, you can live in the U.S. on Twitter, but on Mastodon, you have to live either in Boston or Seattle, and you're only going to find out what's really going on in Boston preferentially. And if you want to find out what's going on in Seattle, you can, but you got to go make the effort. And that's why it's just not the same.
Okay. I don't know whether I understand that or not, but I understand that it's difficult and segregated and feel.
Well, the news you get is going to be local. And the local news is going to be from the server you picked.
I guess that's true.
And so, if you're following other people on other servers, you'll hear from them, but you're not going to hear about all the stuff that's going on that server easily.
Yeah, I guess not.
So if you want to just say, the guy I follow on Twitter also follows these 9 other historians.
Yeah.
And so when I see his tweet, I also see everything else, so I have an idea of what kind of conversation's going on. And I find that interesting, and now I'll go look at politics and do something different. It's not that easy.
All right. Well, we'll see whether either the culture changes somehow, or they change the features of it, or people say, this isn't for me, but it was a good meeting place for us to decide where to announce that we were building something else. We'll see. I don't know. And then there's always email, I guess. Tell me where you go. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Anybody who says their Kagro in the Morning is banned, and you're not allowed to say it. I own this, and nothing will happen because the only person who knows how to turn this thing on is me. But okay, still, the point is I'm jealous, and I want to be like the billionaire guy, and I'm going to start outlawing things.
Well, what if you migrated to Kagro in the afternoon? There's people that only listen in the morning, and they're not going to follow you. And then there's new people you'll pick up, and so everything changes.
It would be different. I mean, the podcast would still be available. Morning listeners could listen the previous day's show in the morning. I don't know if they would do that.
Right.
That's exactly. Not newsy. But there are other people for whom it would be great. West Coasters would pick up a whole new set of those.
So let's talk about the election because it's tomorrow.
All right.
Ready? So what's going to happen? Nobody knows.
I voted already, so nothing for me.
Nothing for you. I vote tomorrow.
Okay.
There's no early voting in Connecticut, but one of the things that's on the ballot is, would you like to do early voting in Connecticut? And I'd like to vote on that today, but I can't. So I have to wait till tomorrow to vote so that next time I can vote today.
Right. Interesting. No cardboard boxes in the town hall
time
window.
Travel paradox here.
Oh, okay, Docs. You got your own jokes.
Yeah. So,
all right, interesting. Well, good. I hope you choose to participate in early voting. Seems like a nice idea.
Well, I have to vote for early voting in order to participate in early voting.
Yeah,
and I will vote for that tomorrow, and I will vote for all of my Democrats tomorrow, and none of my Republicans. And so we'll see what happens. So what's going to happen in Connecticut? Well, it looks like the Democrats will win. The one election that is still up for grabs and nobody knows is My Connecticut 5, with Johanna Hayes and George Logan, the Republican, who paints himself as a moderate. Hayes has some pretty powerful closing argument campaign ads, basically saying George Logan paints himself as a moderate, but he voted against gun control here in Connecticut, and you know what that means, folks.
Yeah.
And so that actually, is pretty powerful. It's not as powerful as the Texas ad I saw this morning. I don't know if you saw it, with Greg Abbott saying, I'm very proud that we're going to loosen our restrictions on gun control. And then they have spaced into it pictures of the guy wandering around Uvalde.
Yes, right. Saying,
and then Abbott says, and I'm sure nothing bad will happen from it.
Right.
And then they have Uvalde. And they don't really have to say anything. It just hits you in the gut.
Yeah, it's true. And I did see that one. And hopefully it's as impactful there as everywhere else. But yeah, I mean, I was watching that thing and saying, the problem is, of course, that down in Texas, the Republicans, they'll look at that and say, see, now that's why we got to have fewer doors.
No, what they'll do is they'll look at it and say, oh, you're trying to politicize this, are you?
Maybe.
My reaction is, well, it's about damn time.
Yeah. I think they know that we're going to be doing that. I don't know if they think they can stop that. But it is interesting, just, that tape of him is him saying we now allow permitless carry here in Texas and nothing bad has happened, and I don't think anything bad is going to happen. And Uvalde didn't change their stance on that. It may have changed their mind, but they're ignoring it. But I don't see how it cannot change your mind. But they're just like, well, it could have happened anywhere. Maybe a baseball bat. I don't know. Something, number of doors. So they do find mental tricks to get around it. But if you're not that kind of a person, then yeah, it hits you in the gut pretty good.
So if you step back and look and try and get an idea of the landscape here, I would say that, again, it's not 100%, but I think the majority of the pollsters are pessimistic about Democratic chances, particularly in the House, but feel like they can't call the Senate. The analysts follow the pollsters, but they're slightly more optimistic about the Senate for Democrats. And still feel that, the Republicans will gain the House, but the question is by how much. And the people on the ground doing work for Democrats, the door knockers, the field, as they like to call it, are more optimistic about Democratic chances because they feel like they're seeing the enthusiasm and everything else that you need in order to get your vote out.
It's not.
Plus, you have the optimists in the party, Simon Rosenberg, Tom Bonnier, the people who do early voting work are very pleased with the amount of early voting that Democrats have gotten so far. So if you're used to looking at Nevada, what happens is there's an early vote, which is both by mail and in person. Democrats win the by mail vote. Republicans win the in-person vote. In Clark County, which is 85% of the population, plus Washoe, which is even Democrat-Republican, you try to build up a firewall in Clark County. You try to break even or maybe even win Washoe and then hope to win it on Election Day, and then try to withstand the onslaught from the rurals, which all vote Republican. That's what you do in Nevada. And that's why everybody watches the early vote there, because that's a place, thanks to John Ralston, who is all of those things, an analyst, familiar with the polls. Nevada Independent runs its own poll, writes it up, and talks to the people on the ground. And he put together his predictions yesterday afternoon, which are actually fairly optimistic for Democrats. He thinks Cortez Masto hangs on. He thinks Governor Sisolak does not. He thinks Dem retains 2 or 3 House seats. So in this environment, that's not bad, especially if you've been following the early vote day to day. So there are still some surprises. There's a lot of mail votes still to come in that will not be announced until Election Day. And if you postmark it by Election Day, it still counts. So voting in Nevada probably go on all week.
Yeah.
So if it's a very close race, we may not know. That's not a red wave, is my point.
Okay.
It's nothing like a red wave. Now, could there still be a red wave? Because absolutely the rurals overwhelm anything and everything that the Democrats have done. Maybe it's possible. Here's the thing, and I wrote this up for the Pundit Roundup this morning. Because 2020 was a COVID year, and because Republicans have been conditioned to distrust mail voting, it may be that Republicans just don't vote by mail. That's what's happening. In other words, the Democrats are doing just about what they usually do in their best years, 18 and 20, and Republicans are doing worse. But that may be because they shifted to Election Day, because they've been conditioned not to trust mail voting.
Yes.
And if that's the case, there's a blue mirage patina to the early vote, which makes it look more democratic, but then they show up on Election Day and just do really well. But that may not be the case. In other words, that's one theory. But a counter to that is a Wall Street Journal article about the fact that the Republicans, like, for example, in Arizona, here's the piece. It's in Washington Post, sorry. Arizona Republicans encourage early voting after warning against it. Some of the party worry their assaults on early voting could ultimately suppress GOP turnout. And then there was another one just flat out worrying about turnout altogether because of the attitude that Republicans have taken toward election in general. And remember, Trump is not on the ballot. So the whole Trump coalition, which has never been proven to show up when Trump is not on the ballot, has to show up on the ballot. Will they? We don't know.
I hope not.
So there's that.
Right.
Then Tom Bonnier, who, again, is tracking the early vote over at Target Early and Target Smart. Target Early is a project of Target Smart. What he's showing is that the vote is becoming significantly younger compared to the early days of early voting, and that's because young voters vote late. Everybody had said they will. They apparently are.
Okay. Even if we were going to vote early,
what does all that mean, and how do you put all of that together? So you have the potential blue mirage early vote, but younger voters preferring a later vote. That makes the Election Day vote less Republican, not more Republican. Plus, it's bolstered by the people who were ignored by the polls, which is the newly registered and no solid history. In other words, younger voters.
That's bolstered.
Or everything is true. And in addition to that, really, it's a question of how the no party affiliation in Florida NPAs or the unaffiliated in other states, they may be the younger voters who just wanted to register and didn't really want to pick a party, because they weren't worried about voting in primaries. They just wanted to vote.
Yeah.
And so who are they and how will they break? The previously registered unaffiliated may vote Republican because of inflation and crime, and the newly unaffiliated voters may vote Democratic because the whole reason they joined up was because of Dobbs and Roe. So there you have all of those competing theories, and that makes the case that what we're really seeing are two waves, a blue one and a red one. The red one's real. The blue one might be real. And so you have these competing things, and that's why nobody really knows what's going on.
All right. We have to collide the waves and then combine their
that's what those large particle colliders in Europe do.
That's true. They were building one in Texas, and I don't know if they ever finished that one, and I don't think they had anybody who knew how to use it.
That's why there's Fermi Labs.
Okay.
We should have Fermi Labs look at our elections. So this is Jonathan Ladd writing at Mischief of Action, which is a political science site.
Okay.
These two big unknowns make the 2022 midterms unusually unpredictable. Here's a few things to keep in mind. Now, the Democrats could do fairly badly tomorrow, and yet still better than presidential parties have historically performed. Again, the baseline is losing 40 seats in the House and 2 or 3 in the Senate. So you can do half of that, lose 20 seats, and lose one Senate seat. We feel like it was a terrible election, and in fact, it's way better than what you could have expected based on the so-called fundamentals or the headwinds or whatever it is you want to call it.
All right. Something to keep in mind.
Okay. So, first of all, nobody knows exactly how much the Republicans' new lower education, lower social trust voting base will turn out without Trump on the ballot or in the White House. Will relying on these voters make it harder for Republicans to get the typical midterm out-party bump? Can only Trump or the excitement of a presidential campaign get him to the polls in high numbers? Usually part of the out-party advantage is that they're relatively more energized, but that's not true because we know that the latest NBC Wall Street Journal poll that was just out a couple of days ago said that Democratic and Republican enthusiasm are equal.
That's right.
With Democrats making up like almost a 10-point deficit since the last poll.
All right. Wow.
Will they have this
I
same?
wonder if that's real.
Will the out party have more enthusiasm? Not according to this poll.
No.
And then Civics, for example, the polling outfit, which is associated with Daily Kos, but run by Drew Linzer, political science, a very good pollster. Their final had the Democratic generic ballot, Democrats up by 3.
Okay.
Right. So
guess.
we don't know about this advantage stuff based on enthusiasm. So it may not be there if Trump's not on the ballot. Second, another typical reason the out party has an advantage in midterms is that the president's party has moved policy in its direction and creates a time of what they call a thermostatic backlash. If Republicans do A, people don't like it, so they want Democrats. And if Democrats do something, people don't like it and they want Republicans. But both policy preferences and political participation react against policy change. People don't like change. They want change, but they don't want change. They want to change who's in charge,
right.
but they don't want to change what they're used to.
Okay.
Nobody knows if I don't like that Elon Musk is in charge of Twitter.
Okay.
But we had to make a change because, it wasn't working. So now that he's in charge, I don't want Twitter to change.
Yes.
I mean, voters are like that.
Sure.
So both policy preferences and political participation react against policy change. Nobody knows if the Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade will disrupt this, but it might, despite the Democrats controlling the presidency and Congress. One of the major policy changes since Biden took office was in the Supreme Court, in the conservative direction.
Yeah. So
it's rare for
policy
to move so far against the preferences of the president's party on such a topic. We don't know how that will disrupt the normal pattern of thermostatic midterm backlash. So everybody's saying, well, just look at the historical data. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. So these two sources of uncertainty make it especially hard to predict races that are very close in the polls, and small differences in turnout and enthusiasm could determine whether there's a polling error in the Democrat or Republican favor. So with polls as they are, the election could plausibly be a significant win for either party at this particular point in time. Nathaniel Rakich writes, if there's a normal polling error in favor of Republicans, they could win 54 Senate seats and 259 House seats. If there's a normal polling error in favor of Democrats, they could win 54 Senate seats and 227 House seats. So be ready for anything tomorrow.
It's all fraud, in other words.
Right, and the way they put it at 538, Republicans are just a normal polling error away from a landslide or a wipeout. That doesn't stop Republicans from assuming it's going to be a wipeout for them, a landslide.
Yes, they assume landslide, we assume wipeout. That's
right. Exactly right. And that's, based on who the parties are, but that's also true. That's what's going on right now. So just people have to be aware.
All right. That's not reassuring, but
it's not helpful.
True.
But it's true.
Yes. All right. So we don't know.
And we have it doesn't sound like it should be. But this is what's going on. And especially when it comes to the Senate, when people tell you, look, I know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen.
Well, all right.
Nobody knows how the unaffiliated are going to vote or whether they're going to show up.
They're like The Walking Dead.
The part about early vote that people can look at is they say, okay, well, at least these people show up.
Right. And then, if they show up, they show up. And then you can just make guesses about who they are and why they were showing up. When
right. And again, except for Nevada, it's really hard.
They really tell you.
Like, what are you comparing it to?
I don't know.
Which year? 2020, a presidential year? This is a midterm. Trump's not on the ballot. You're comparing it to 2018, but so much has changed since then, including how states count their votes and how they vote and whether or not they have early vote. So what are you comparing it to? So, it's difficult.
It is, no doubt. And then, of course, you have the various lawsuits, for instance, where Republicans are attempting to throw out early cast ballots for technical reasons.
Yep.
And also that Democrats now scrambling to try to contact the people who have made those mistakes so that they can correct them. And
or
Republicans
cure the ballot,
yes,
as they like to say.
Republicans suing again to try to prevent the Democrats from telling people who made mistakes that they made mistakes and they can correct them. Because
and then when you try to make rules at the last minute, you find they don't work. That's what's happening with the Pennsylvania courts.
Yep.
right? They're saying, okay, so the thing is, you have to date your ballot.
Yes, not.
And what if everything about it is
either.
correct except the date is off? Should your ballot count?
Right.
And the Democrats say, why not?
To do with it.
You voted.
Right. You're clear.
Just
your
count the damn
intent
vote.
is clear. You put the
intent
wrong
is clear,
date on,
exactly.
or no date, but it arrived before election. Like election day's tomorrow, and I have your ballot. What's the problem? Right. Well, you didn't put the date on it. Well, the date is to tell me that it arrived before election day,
What,
and
you
it
think
did.
I voted too early?
Yeah. Right. So now you're able to, because those ballots are sealed and they have people's names and signatures, and they should have a date, but they don't, on the outside, you can call them up and say, did you know that if you don't put the date on this thing, it doesn't count? And you can come down to City Hall and either put the date on the thing, or you can come down and invalidate this ballot that we have and cast a new one.
It's
or
complicated.
You can cast
so over
a
the
provisional.
weekend,
There's a lot.
this is from the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Yeah.
The Pennsylvania Supreme Court has issued a second order on mail ballot dates as the legal fight continues. The justices on Saturday clarified what they meant when they ordered earlier this week that wrongly dated mail ballots be rejected. Meanwhile, a new lawsuit was filed in federal court on the issue. The state Supreme Court ordered Tuesday directed counties to reject mail ballots missing the date, as well as those where the voter put a wrong date, but the decision has since stirred uncertainty among election administrators over what exactly constitutes an incorrect date, and drawn new litigation from advocates who say rejecting ballots over what amounts to a mistake threatens to potentially disenfranchise thousands of legal voters.
Yes.
So mail-in ballots are to be rejected in this election if the handwritten date falls before September 19th or after November 8th, and the absentee ballots are to be rejected if they're dated before August 30th or after November 8th. And that's what it is for now until they get another ruling saying, okay, well, the way you administer it, that doesn't work either, so we're going to do this. When you try to stop people from voting, you really have to jump through hoops to do that, and that's part of the issue that's going on here.
Yeah.
And by the way, one of the reasons you go to the polls and you vote in midterms is because sometimes those Supreme Court justices are, in fact, on the ballot. That's what's happening in Michigan, where Democrats have a good chance to pick up a Republican seat. They are leading in the polls with the two justices that are up for election. And Michigan, by the way, looks like a bright spot overall. Looks like Gretchen Whitmer will win. It looks like Jocelyn Benson, Secretary of State, will win. Dana Nessel, the Attorney General, is in a tough fight with Matt DePerna, who's an out-and-out crook and election denier.
That's bad.
And my Michigan friends tell me that basically it's because she just hasn't worked as hard as the other two ladies in shoring up her support
Maybe she's
in an otherwise conservative state. And her gender and her sexual orientation shouldn't be on the ballot, but it is because, politics involves people.
Sure.
And so there are conservatives who won't vote for her because of those things, even though that shouldn't be the reason. But in any case, Michigan still looks like a bright spot overall. Plus, there's an abortion, codified and make it legal forever, not according to some laws written years and years ago that we never followed. So Michigan looks okay there. And, it just brings home the point that all elections are, in fact, local. Tip O'Neill is right. And voting for the justices in the Supreme Court can decide election stuff, not just the Secretary of State, not just the governor.
That's true. They can make rules, change rules, bend rules.
You can see it in Ohio,
rules.
where Frank LaRose, the Republican, is making it so Democratic votes simply don't count. Wisconsin is close to a supermajority that might do that. There's every reason to turn out there and prevent that. These are the sorts of things that get people to the polls, and so we'll see what happens. And again, why it's so difficult to make predictions.
Yep.
So Jonathan Weiler, a political scientist, on his Substack goes into what's going to happen part one, and he talks about the different factions and the different groups of prognosticators.
Okay.
Like there's Nate Silver in 538, for example, and he goes over the history of how Silver's model gave Clinton a 70% chance of winning a majority. He gave Trump a 30% chance of winning. And that 30% chance, in fact, came to be, and everybody remembers it. He said Clinton was going to win. That's not what he said. 30% chance is still pretty big chance. If you go to the doctor and your doctor says, listen, you have only a 30% chance of dying this year, you're not going to be very happy. You have only a 30% chance of having a terminal illness. The other 70% says it's a cold. You're not going to be very happy with that.
At 30%, the rain icon shows up on the Weather Channel, so it's pretty serious.
Yeah, so my rain.
Bring an umbrella.
And now Silver's model is basically a 50-50 Senate chance. So who's he say going to win? He says you can't tell. So the people who put those models together say, yeah, we're pretty certain that the Republicans will take the House, although we're really not sure what the number's going to be. But the Senate, we just can't tell. It's too close. So I take that to mean, well, that means that the Senate's too close to call. However, there's another group of prognosticators, and they're the ones who look at the so-called fundamentals and say that's the only thing that matters. There's Michael Lewis Beck, who has a very good track record and says Democrats can expect to lose 3 to 5 Senate seats and 20 to 40 House seats. In a recent interview, Lewis Beck criticized pundits and observers, including Nate Silver, who assumed the election exists apart from past elections. That's something special about this one. That's never true. It never happens. And so there's that. And then there's a third group, the political scientists, who think, like we went over, there are special factors. Trump's not on the ballot. These are new voters not used to voting all the time. And at the same time, we have Dobbs and Roe and younger voters energized and Gen Z Americans who say they're going to vote in big numbers. And so we really don't know. So you can expect not a great night tomorrow. But there's still enough uncertainty to say, well, there's no reason to assume, as Republicans do, that we've already lost. Okay.
Certainly at this point, people can probably wait for, in traditional settings, you would say, well, you can wait for tomorrow night to find out what happened. But of course, this one will take weeks. So who knows that'll be interesting, too, how it tests people's patience. This is new modeling that we need to think of. Early voting has screwed with things a little bit, too. How about late counting?
Right. And since I'm toward the end of the hour, let me just give you a little optimistic thread here from Tom Bonnier this morning.
Okay.
Who says, or was it this morning? It was yesterday evening. The last week's been pretty good for Democrats in key states, and they appear to be closing stronger than they did in 2020. For this thread, I'll just focus on party registration states because he does modeling party, and people don't like that. You said modeled party. You don't really know. Well, it's a model.
Okay.
It says right in the name, modeled party. It's a model. Okay, but you want only those where we have actual registration? That'll leave Georgia out. We'll do modeling separately. So, because Georgia doesn't tell you which party they belong to when you early vote. For this thread, I'll just focus on party registration states, lest you question modeled party comparisons. In Arizona last week, the Democratic vote margin was 4.3 points behind the same point in 2020, but as of today, it's now 0.9 points ahead.
Okay.
Net 5.2 point turnaround. In North Carolina, the Dem voted margin was 1.9 points behind 2020. And as of today, they're 1 point ahead. That's a 2.9% margin swing. In other words, Democrats are finishing strong is what he's trying to say.
Busy weekend.
In Pennsylvania, the Democratic vote share margin among male voters cast a week ago was 2.6 points ahead of the same point in 20, and now it's 5.7 ahead. So all of that's good. But again, part of the reason when you actually look at the numbers is that things may, in fact, have changed significantly as to how things happen. And Pennsylvania is a good example. In 2018, there were 163,000 early votes up to this point. Mm-hmm. In 2020, there were 2 million.
Yes.
And this year, there's 1 million.
All right.
Total.
It's a lot.
So, which year are you supposed to compare yourself to? There's an example of how things have changed, so what does it all mean? You don't really know because it hasn't really established itself, but it's still good. You'd rather be up than down in these numbers.
Yes.
So do you feel confident? Do you not feel confident? Somebody said to Tom Bonnier, and he said, look, I sure hope we have good early signs on Tuesday night, but it's possible that the Senate comes down to a Georgia runoff, and there's a lot of competitive House races that take a long time to count in places like California. Mm-hmm. And Democrats could still win the House, but they have to run the table. Not impossible, but it's not the most likely outcome. So, there you have it.
Okay. Well, Trump wasn't the most likely outcome either.
Right.
That can happen. All right. Well, yeah, it's unfortunate. We have nothing to say but wait and see in the end.
And with all of that,
forever.
if you're going to look at registered votes, by registered party, you still don't know what the unaffiliated are going to do. Older unaffiliated will probably vote Republican. Younger unaffiliated may vote Democrat. We don't know.
Yeah. All right. Dang. And then, of course, we say we will wait and see, but then what we're going to wait and see is...
You can't take the early vote and say, look, we're winning. You can't take the early vote and say, we're not turning up. We are.
I didn't do it.
And they aren't.
Okay.
What you don't know is, will they? That we're going to find out.
I don't know. I'm lost in the pronouns.
Who's going to show up tomorrow?
We're going to win.
Republicans haven't shown up. We're winning the early vote. Well, are they going to show up tomorrow? I don't know. That's tomorrow.
They're busy. I told them Election Day was Wednesday anyway.
Yeah.
So we'll see whether that works. They may not know where the polling places are. They may be boycotting polling places. They
Another
might just be appealing directly
Nick
to Putin.
Orovich pollster says, imagine a special election for dog catcher where 10% of the eligible voters vote. You don't really care about the non-response people and the other 90% because only a few people are going to show up anyway. So non-response bias doesn't matter. But if everybody shows up, then it does matter. So what is this midterm? Is it like the one where everybody shows up, where non-response matters? Or is it more like the one where only 10% show up, in which case it doesn't matter? We don't know.
I don't know.
And trying to figure out what the voting population is going to look like and how many people show up and what the turnout's going to be is something that every pollster does differently, and so you get different results.
Okay.
Tricky. What do I know? Unusually unpredictable. Special factors. These are all things that I'm looking at when I try to round up what people are thinking, and that's why it's so uncertain. The only certainty? $250 million spent on Walker Warnock election.
Wow.
So the people who are making out like bandits are the political consultants. And with that, we'll be back on Wednesday to go over not what's going to happen, but what did happen.
Yeah, unless we quit and become political consultants.
Or start doing it in the afternoon.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We look forward to having Greg back on Wednesday when we may still have to report that we still don't know what's going on and we have to wait and see. It's a new world out there, and some of the reasons for it are things like the aforementioned, when I say aforementioned, I mean an hour ago, aforementioned Reuters story that reports that the Russians may or may not be telling the truth about whether or not they're not telling the truth in this election. And they really shouldn't be telling us anything in this election. The fact that they are is interference. And the question is, are they really doing it? And will it matter? Russia's Prigozhin, the Reuters headline says, admits interfering in U.S. elections. But remember that it will be to Prigozhin's advantage to say that the Russians are basically running things, whether they're actually doing anything or not. There's no penalty to the Russians for lying and saying that they're interfering when they're really not. And there's no penalty to the Russians unless you can prove it anyway when they say they're interfering and they actually are, or when they say they're not interfering but they are. But that selection is out now. I guess if you have the two, you'd make 4 quadrants for this, right? The 2 quadrants in which the Russians say they are interfering. And they either are, in fact, interfering or are lying about interfering and just want you to think they're interfering. And then there's 2 quadrants in which they say they are not interfering, but they are either lying and are interfering or telling the truth and not interfering. So I guess you have to decide which quadrant you think we're in. Russia's Prigozhin admits interfering in U.S. elections. That has the effect of, for American readers, making them believe that Russians are, in fact, interfering. And I think probably even without his saying that, most Americans at this point probably would be inclined to believe that Russians are interfering, whether they're truthfully telling us that they are or lying to us and saying that they're not or whatever. So this is datelined in London for some reason, even though I think they're talking about interfering in U.S. elections. But the point is that Yuri Prigozhin? Yuri, right? No, Yevgeny. It's his brother, Yevgeny Prigozhin. I don't know. It started with a what we call a Y, and they spell it in Cyrillic, so I don't know what they call the letter. Anyway, mixed me up. It's Yevgeny Prigozhin. And whatever he said, he must have said it in London. Or at least the listener was listening in London, and perhaps it was a Zoom call. I don't know. Russian businessman Yevgeny Prigozhin. Why would he know anything about it? I don't know. Because there's no line between businessmen and mobsters and government officials in Russia, because there's no real government. There you go. Russian businessman / whatever the hell he is, Yevgeny Prigozhin, said on Monday he had interfered in U.S. elections. So again, even more confusion. I'm interfering, so I assume the whole government is interfering. Are you the whole government? Yes / no. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. Depends what day it is. I'm interfering. I know friends of mine are interfering. I guess we're interfering as a whole on behalf of the government. That is interesting too. Well, he says he had interfered in U.S. elections and would continue doing so in the future. The first such admission from a figure who has been formally implicated by Washington in efforts to influence American politics. He says it doesn't matter. I admit that I'm doing it. I want you to think I'm doing it. Might be lying. I might not be lying, but you don't have me under your jurisdiction, so it doesn't matter. You'll never get me. You'll never take me alive, I guess would be essentially how he would be saying it. In comments posted by the press service of his Concord catering firm on Russia's Facebook equivalent, Vkontakte, might be how you pronounce it, Prigozhin said, so what are we talking about? The press service, I guess, is that like the press, the PR people for his catering firm. Remember, Prigozhin primarily disguises himself as a Russian businessman running, I guess, Concord catering firm. So the PR arm or whatever, the public relations arm for Concord Catering went on Russian Facebook called Vkontakte and said that Prigozhin said, "We have interfered," parentheses, "in U.S. elections." So I guess they asked him, "Have you interfered in U.S. elections?" "We have interfered." And so the actual quote is, "We have interfered, we are interfering, and we will continue to interfere carefully, accurately, surgically, and in our own way, as we know how to do." Now, they might not, but that makes us, it's supposed to make us scared. And maybe it's working. The remark was posted on the eve of the U.S. midterm elections. That's actually today. In response to a request for comment from a Russian news site. So a Russian news site contacts Concord Catering and says, "Catering guy, are you interfering in U.S. elections?" And catering guy's PR people say that he says that he has been interfering and is interfering. And you might, at that point in the United States, you would ask, why, not just so why are you interfering, but why are you asking a catering company guy this question? But that gets back to what we were saying at the beginning of this article. You know all of this if you've been listening to the show for a long time. If you're brand new, we don't believe there's a Russian government in this show. It's just more or less a mobocracy. We also think weird things about Saudi Arabia, as you call it, Saudish Arabia, as we say. Totally different story, but in the same ballpark in terms of don't think of them as a regular country with a regular government. Anyway, so people think you're crazy when you say that stuff, but then you should be able to point to them and say, look, when... That's look, but it sounded a little bit like or lick, in case you're wondering what that. Look, here's what you need to do. Understand that when they want an answer about whether or not Russia, whether that's the Russian government or Russians at large, is interfering in American elections, and they want to just ask people point blank, look, is Russia interfering or aren't they? They don't go to the Russian government. They don't ask Putin, he's not going to answer that question. But they don't ask a person whose main cover in life is that they're a government official. They go to the guy from Concord Catering in London, I guess. I don't know why it's daylight in London. But at any rate, maybe the only people who are reading V Contacte are in London, or they get early wind of it because it happened in the morning in Russia, and it was morning in London sooner after the comments are posted on V Contacte than it was going to be in the United States. They could wait, but it would take several hours for American reporters to wake up and read V Contacte. And essentially what we're seeing here is a catering guy says he's interfering in American elections. Do we believe it? Ordinarily in the United States, we would say no, right? A guy who owns a catering business here in the United States, if he claims on Facebook or anything else that he's interfering in Russian elections, well, for one thing, you say you probably are wasting your time. But if you said you were interfering, I don't know, in the French elections, we would say you're dreaming. You're a caterer. But in Russia, this works because one thing, caterers for some reason are running Russia. There's one issue all by itself. And two, we believe it. And three, I guess we believe it because this catering guy is a billionaire, whereas I would imagine very few caterers are billionaires here in the United States. But there's got to be somebody that's got a business that's categorizable as catering and has made a tremendous amount of money. All right, that's it. I don't know. Anyway, I need to update you on other bits of information. Chief among them doesn't matter a whit because, in a manner of speaking, because it is that they've got a power outage at Justice Putnam's Netroots Radio World Headquarters from a winter storm. Which winter storm? The one that's there. I don't know. It says, but he refers to it that way, as a power outage from this winter storm. It's the one that matters. What matters to you is if you were listening to the show live, you're not listening now because we're off the air. And pretty soon we'll start to see Twitter messages, if they're still allowed on Twitter, according to Elon Musk, that there's no more show. What happened? And, what do you think the answer is? There's a power outage. I don't know. At any rate, so there will still be the podcast, but by the time you hear this as a podcast, it'll be too late. There was never anything you could do about it in the first place. Just like the fact that Russian caterers are capable of manipulating election outcomes in the United States, allegedly. And we believe it. Reuters writes a story, and this is an interesting thing. That where else? I mean, it really should be questioned, right? But I guess we'll say nowhere else in mainstream media will you find anybody asking the question, why does a caterer know anything about this? And the reason is because it's not a caterer. He's part of the oligarchy that runs Russia, which brings us back to, if you had difficulty getting your head around the concept of Russia's not a real country with a real government, now you understand maybe a little bit more why I say that. There's a billionaire caterer who says he's interfering in American elections, and nobody says that guy's crazy or under arrest or anything. And Reuters is happy to run it. Well, we got an exclusive about interference in the American elections. Really? Who told you? The head of the, they don't have the KGB anymore. What do they call themselves now? FSB? Is it the GRU? And it was, well, they're all involved, but I talked to the guy who owns the catering company. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Sure it does. It's, what's his name? Yevgeny Prigozhin. Oh, really? Catering? Is that how he describes his main line of work? It is. He's a legitimate businessman. Get it? Now you know why the mob references. I mean, is he a caterer? Is he not a caterer? Is he an election interferer? I don't know. All right. Well, let's see. He goes on to brag some more. During our pinpoint operations, we will remove both kidneys and the liver at once, Prigozhin said. He did not elaborate on the cryptic comment. Presumably, I guess, by normalizing that otherwise crazy psychobabble, you come out at the other end by saying this is what he meant by being surgical, that they know exactly how to interfere and to go in and do critical damage directly and at once. Do they? I don't know. Is he doing any of this? I don't know. Is he a caterer? I don't know. I mean, I guess he is. Is he? Yes. Okay. I was just asking myself mentally, and I was about to do it out loud, this must be the guy that they call Putin's chef, not because he actually cooks for Putin, probably, or that he's even particularly close, but because he's a caterer. So that's the joke, I guess. And it says it right here in the next paragraph. Prigozhin, who is often referred to as Putin's chef because his catering company operates Kremlin contracts, I don't know whether Putin eats it or not, has been formally accused of sponsoring Russia-based troll farms that seek to influence U.S. politics. And I don't know. I mean, if you think that's really crazy and, oh my God, how could a guy, what the hell's going on there in Russia? That a caterer is making so much money that he's got money to spare to interfere in U.S. politics. But I guess it starts to make a certain amount of sense. Like, how do you get to be a billionaire caterer? I guess if the Kremlin gives you a whole bunch of contracts, you can make $1 billion or 1 billion rubles or whatever the number is that you would have to make in rubles in order for it to be $1 billion. But then you say, well, fine. Why isn't he just busying himself with making food, and more food? And the answer is, well, if you want to continue to have a Kremlin contract and guaranteed all these billions of dollars, then you got to kick back some of that money and invest it in interfering in elections, because that's what I want to do. I'm Putin. That's what I want to do with my time and the Russian government / conglomeration of resources, whatever we call ourselves now. So that's how, I guess, as a caterer, you get involved in interfering in U.S. elections. To do it to curry favor with the guy who hands out the contracts that makes you a billionaire caterer. And if you think that's crazy, there's a guy with a car company who just bought Twitter. So are we doing any better? I don't know. In July, the U.S. State Department offered a reward of up to $10 million for information on Prigozhin in connection with, quote, engagement in U.S. election interference. Aha, I caught him. That will be $10 million, please, U.S. State Department. I want to report to you that Yevgeny, not Yuri, Prigozhin is interfering. I got him dead to rights. Totally confessed to the press, and I bring it to your attention exclusively. He has been hit by U.S., British, and European Union sanctions. Prigozhin kept a low profile publicly until recently, but has become more outspoken in the course of the Ukraine war, including by criticizing the performance of Russia's generals. In September, he admitted to founding the Kremlin-aligned Wagner Group mercenary group. He founded it. Not like somebody lost it and I founded it. He created it. He's a caterer. He's a murderer. He's a little bit of everything. I run a catering company and a mercenary army. And again, isn't it a little crazy the way the lines are blurred there? I don't know, but this is what they claim to be doing. We blur our own lines. Okay. So, all right, he founded the Wagner Group, which is active in Syria, Africa, and Ukraine. And good markets. Everybody eats there. Maybe he hopes to be able to take over the catering businesses in those countries. Last Friday, it opened a defense technology center in St. Petersburg, a further step by Prigozhin to highlight his military credentials. The caterer with military credentials who's also running the government. It's pretty amazing. All right. So Scott Anderson now notices that we are off the air and texts as much. We are, in fact, off the air. This will do nothing to reassure him, of course. In order to do that, I'd have to stop talking to you and text him. And live, it wouldn't matter very much because nobody's listening live. But what a boring podcast that would be if I went ahead and did that. I guess I have the luxury of doing anything I want. Now, I can edit it out later. That's kind of liberating, but a little frightening at the same time. All right, let's see. By the way, because I have a Reuters article open, I will now read you another Reuters article. Total coincidence. I just happened to see somebody tweeting it around with a link, opened it up because of the interest in the headline. Not something I didn't find it in the sidebar from the first article. This is about election workers being threatened and intimidated here in the United States. I don't know whether it's happening at Yevgeny Prigozhin's behest or not. Maybe, maybe not. The headline, "Kill them." How do you like that? That's enclosed in quotes. It's somebody's quote saying, "Kill them." Who are they? that should be killed? Arizona election workers, apparently, who face midterm threats. This a piece by Linda So, Peter Eisler, and Jason Zepp. By the way, who wrote the Russian propaganda? It just says Reuters. There's no name attached to it. And I wonder whether that means anything in particular. Like perhaps, well, Prigozhin is saying this, but it might be BS. Does anyone want to put their name on this report? I mean, you could legitimately say, I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what Prigozhin is saying. I'm just reporting it because we think he's interfered in elections before, even though he's a caterer. He's also, after all, runs a mercenary group, and maybe, what else did he add to this? They were saying that it was military in nature. A defense technology center, or whatever that's supposed to mean, in St. Petersburg. Well, at any rate, maybe no one wanted to put their name on it, but they're happy to put their name on this report because this is a little easier to get a handle on. In Arizona, election workers in Arizona's most fiercely contested county faced more than 100 violent threats and intimidating communications in the run-up to Tuesday's midterms, most of them based on election conspiracy theories promoted by former President Donald Trump and his allies. The harassment in Maricopa County included menacing emails and social media posts, threats to circulate personal information online, and photographing employees arriving at work, according to nearly 1,600 pages of documentation obtained by Reuters through a public records request for security records and correspondence related to threats and harassment against election workers. Between July 11th and August 22nd, the county election office documented at least 140 threats and other hostile communications, the records show, including this fun one that says, "You will all be executed. Wire around their limbs and tied and dragged by a car," wrote another. Oh, very inventive. The documents reveal the consequences of election conspiracy theories as voters nominated candidates in August to compete in the midterms. Many of the threats in Maricopa County, which helped propel President Joe Biden to victory over Trump in 2020, cited debunked claims around fake ballots, rigged voting machines, and corrupt elections officials. Other jurisdictions nationwide have seen threats and harassment this year by the former president's supporters and prominent Republican figures who question the legitimacy of the 2020 election, according to interviews with Republican and Democratic elections officials in 10 states. At least there, they're naming which party it is that's actually doing this and not trying to both sides it yet, anyway. The threats come at a time of growing concern over the risk of political violence, highlighted by the October 28th attack on Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband by a man who embraced right-wing conspiracy theories. In Maricopa, a county of 4.5 million people that includes Phoenix, the harassment unnerved some election workers, according to previously unreported incident documents in the emails and interviews with county officials. I can't believe there are still unreported ones out there. A number of temporary workers quit after being accosted outside the main ballot counting center following the August 2nd primary. Stephen Richer, the county recorder who helps oversee Maricopa's elections, said in an interview. One temporary employee broke down in tears after a stranger photographed her, according to an email from Richer to county officials. The unidentified worker left work early and never returned, and that's, of course, what they're after. It's all, I guess, part of the same plan, right? If you intimidate people out of showing up for work, and therefore they have fewer workers, and it therefore takes longer to count the votes once all the voting is done, that gives them more opportunity than once the later the vote results come in, the more they think people will believe them if they say the lateness is because of fraud. So they're looking to create delays so that there's quote-unquote evidence of fraud. And it's easy enough to manufacture those delays. All you have to do is threaten to kill the workers, and then they won't show up and do the counting. See how it works? Very easy. So, anyway, the unidentified worker left work early and never returned. She wasn't a political person, she told Richer. She just wanted a job. Too bad for you. On August 3rd, strangers in tactical gear, remember what that means? Stuff that looks like you might have a gun, calling themselves First Amendment auditors, which has nothing to do really with First Amendment here so much, but okay, circled the Elections Department building, pointing cameras at employees and their vehicle license plates. The people vowed to continue the surveillance through the midterms, according to an August 4th email from Scott Jarrett, Maricopa's elections director, to county officials. It feels very much like predatory behavior and that we are being stalked, wrote Jarrett. You are. Next up, the section entitled Attacks Persisted. Since the 2020 election, Reuters has documented more than 1,000 intimidating messages to elections officials across the country, including more than 120 that could warrant prosecution, according to legal experts. Many officials said they had hoped the harassment would wane over time after the 2020 results were confirmed, but the attacks have persisted, fueled in many cases by right-wing media figures and groups that continue without evidence to cast election officials as complicit in a vast conspiracy by China, Democratic officials, and voting equipment manufacturers to rob Trump of a second presidential term, even though he's not running for re-election at this point, and it's 2022, not 2024. You get the idea? We could go on. There's more examples of the terrible things that they say, but I think you've seen all of that before. The names of the outlets that are encouraging this have not changed either. So, any number of things that we've heard before still being confirmed here. Might as well use the time, even though we're not broadcasting live, and I realize that this is the case. Many other stories we want to include in the roundup for what will be the podcast later on. Let's see. How about this? This is sort of an interesting... Oh, you know what? Before I do this, here's a better... something that segues off of the subject of these threats and intimidation and what the point of doing all of this is. And I think it's pretty, obvious what the point is. But I thought this is another interesting observation. Brian Beutler making this time about the intimidation of a different group of people. Joan Walsh observing that there was in New York a big, get out the vote rally with Democratic gubernatorial candidate Kathy Hochul, also Vice President Harris was there, and it says Clinton, and I assume here maybe it was Hillary. I don't know, maybe it was also Bill. They live in New York. Maybe they were both there. And they had a big rally. A Hochul, Harris, Clinton event is how it's described here. And Joan Walsh, not our own Joan McCarter this time, saying, I realized after I wrote this is a piece for The Nation, that the reason the high-energy Hochul, Harris, Clinton event was held in a controlled indoor space, even though it was beautiful outside, had to be security. And it made me sad. It's interesting that that is the case. And then the observation on that by Brian Beutler, who says, this thing where Republicans can campaign freely, have their events, go about their normal business, even as they've made every Dem campaign event a huge security risk, is the kind of relevant information members of the both sides media could present to consumers in the course of regular election coverage. But they refuse. Like, why not write, as he says here, the rally was delayed due to strict security protocols, which had to be put in place after the leader of the opposing party began inciting his supporters by falsely claiming the last election was stolen from him, etc., etc. Why not lay that out, right? It's a good question. And we don't have the answer to it yet, except that, maybe we do have the answer. And Greg was the one who posed it, that above all else, these outlets need to maintain a neutrality that keeps advertisers comfortable. And is that really the answer that's driving all this? But it's a good point. And by the way, another great plan, right? Like one plan is if we intimidate election workers, they'll quit. And then nobody will be counting the ballots, and it'll go slow, and then we can point to the slowness and say, that's fraud. That's great for our plans. Similarly, a great thing to do is to say, well, we're raising money and supporting our candidates. They're raising money and supporting their candidates. But if we hang around in our tactical gear, and really, is there nothing we enjoy quite as much in the world as hanging around in tactical gear? So our cosplay hobby is indulged here. We'll hang around in tactical gear, and not only, when you're done threatening the election workers, hang around where they're going to have the rally. In other words, a fun thing for them to do and something that's helpful for their candidates. What if you both raised a bunch of money and the Republican candidates are able to use their money having a big rally, exciting people to get out for voting, whereas Democrats have to spend half of their money on security because they're worried that you will come and murder their candidates and their supporters. In addition to which, instead of having a large, boisterous, and visible outdoor rally in beautiful weather, you have to have it inside, where there may be high energy inside, but outside it just looks like a building. It doesn't look like anything. Two ways to hurt Democratic campaigns just for fun that cost them lots of money and maybe votes. Of course they'd be doing that.
Sup fam, it's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see, I just saw somebody pick up on an Elon Musk tweet. I guess he's getting political. It's now time, day before the election. He says, to independent-minded voters, shared power curbs the worst excesses of both parties. Therefore, I recommend voting for a Republican Congress, given that the presidency is Democratic, which is, a child's understanding of politics in general. So, to be expected, I guess, coming from him. By the way, you get the same result in, I was listening to Greg saying that the predictions are that perhaps Republicans gain control of the House, but Democrats gain control and retain control of the Senate. You get the same result. Shared power, I suppose, except that's not really shared power, is it? It's just the undoing of all power, really. Because they just refuse to cooperate on anything. So, it's just a dumb and outdated view of things. I mean, it does tend to, it curbs, here's the problem, it curbs the best of both parties as well. I mean, that is kind of a problem. But at any rate, no one's looking at that. They're all looking at the worst things. Anyway, anyhow, I guess I might as well say that. But whatever. We'll just throw that out there and have fun, and then I'll stop paying attention to Elon Musk. Oh, also, by the way, our friend and listener, who I guess hasn't been able to listen for the past half hour or so, Skip Bitter, or how shall we emphasize Skip Bitter? Skip Bitter. I don't know. Sorry, Skip. Right? Who tweets also as where he could have put Elon Musk has instead put Dr. the Frog, that is Kermit the Frog, which is in his avatar here, notes for the record that the Pennsylvania case that we were discussing before, with the dates on not on the ballots. That's the point actually of the observation here, but that the date for Pennsylvania mail-in votes isn't even something you put on the ballot. It's on the covering envelope, which is, of course, how they know that they are undated now, even though those envelopes are unopened. But you get the idea? So it really doesn't affect anything. That's why Pennsylvania voting officials, elections officials, were inclined to say it just doesn't impact anything. We still can see that it came in on time, and the ballot inside is unspoiled. It's just the wrapper that it came in doesn't have a date on it, but we know that it arrived before Election Day, so it should be valid. I guess you could say we don't know for sure that it didn't arrive before a certain date, but given that we don't really even distribute the ballots until a certain point, it's very difficult to submit your ballot beforehand. But we know what date that was supposed to be, and I guess any ballots that arrived before then could be segregated, or maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I don't know. But the point is, it doesn't really have anything to do with the casting of the votes or the determination of, the validity of the ballot or the intent of the voter. Anyway, so moving on. As we were, let's see. Also, let's see, other observations from other friends and listeners. Mighty OCD on the Mastodon thing, saying most people follow the federated timeline on Mastodon, which shows everyone you follow no matter what the server. Oh, okay. That's of some interest to it. I'm not certain I can exactly untangle that, but it sounds like a workaround for the problem of whether or not you're getting updates from people you follow who just happen to be members of other servers. I guess there's a way around that. And Darwin has been saying for some time now, he encouraged us a couple of days ago when this idea first emerged about people migrating en masse off of Twitter, saying, maybe Reddit would be the place to go and gather. And at least for Kagro in the Morning, as a group, instead of our hashtag gang moving to another social media network like, in the vein of Twitter, moving instead to a subreddit. Although I've never been a Reddit user, so I'm not any more familiar. It'd be blank slate moving to Mastodon, blank slate moving to Reddit. I don't really use it or get how it works. Anyway, but it is out there. If you're going to learn something, you might as well learn that. And Reddit doesn't seem poised to disappear anytime soon either. So he was saying, personally, I'm leaning more and more into Reddit, hoping that I, Kagro X, will set up a KITM page and thread there. We'll see how much time I want to put into figuring out how we migrate. But I mean, if Twitter collapses and we can't use the hashtag, we got to use something. And I can't say I'm opposed to using Reddit for it. I guess it's a matter of some functionality that I'll want is the ability to have some app open that will enable me to take real-time comments or ignore real-time comments until an hour later, depending on how you look at it. So that Reddit may or may not offer that functionality. All right. So good observation from Brian Beutler, though, pointing out the difficulty or the strategic advantage gained by Republicans who lose nothing, apparently, because nobody's arresting them en masse, by the advantage they gain by threatening both election workers and the opposing candidates and supporters of those candidates. You cost the other campaign lots of opportunities and lots of money just trying to stay safe, whereas you don't have to incur that cost because nobody's threatening you and your candidates. Isn't that a nice way to have things work out? All right. Greg also mentioned that something that we've come to know, I think, both in reading certain articles and just mentioning in passing what's going on in Wisconsin, where Wisconsin, the most heavily gerrymandered state on the state legislative and congressional level, and they've really achieved a level of distortion of the vote just unrivaled by any other state. The state itself, Wisconsin, is divided more or less 50-50 or very nearly 50-50 in terms of its voters' allegiances. And yet, that's what we would ordinarily call it when we deal with gerrymandering and the attempts at fixing gerrymandering, where we have, various states adopt new policies, whether by referendum or through the legislature, where they say we want to have as many competitive districts as we can. The whole state should be competitive. I don't know how many districts will be competitive, but 50-50, that's what you're talking about, making the ideal for competitive districts. But what they've done in Wisconsin is they've gerrymandered so surgically and so tightly that they stand on the brink in Wisconsin of granting a veto-proof supermajority to Republicans in the state legislature there, despite the fact that the electorate is divided 50-50, and you would think that in a fair world, the legislature too would be 50-50. And what a great thing it would be in Elon Musk's view, let's say, that the control of the legislature should be switching back and forth with some regularity between the two parties. But instead, it looks to be permanently cemented in favor of Republicans. And if they were to gain a veto-proof supermajority, then they could just do things like just pass laws that say, you know what, from now on, it's illegal to count ballots that are cast for Democratic candidates because they are vampire pedophiles after all, and we can't have them in government, so they should be excluded from government. So why don't we just say, look, do what you want. You have a First Amendment right to cast your ballot for anyone you want. We're just not going to count it. Well, that's an outrage, says the Democratic governor of Wisconsin. I will veto that measure. And Republicans now may finally get themselves the power to come back and say, it's very interesting that you would veto it. That just tells us that you're pro-vampire pedophile, but it doesn't affect our ability to implement this as law because we have a veto-proof majority. Override the veto and make it allegedly, purportedly, law in Wisconsin that it is no longer legal to count ballots that are cast for Democratic candidates. And then you gotta cross your fingers, and I guess they would then hope, well, maybe the Wisconsin Supreme Court won't interfere with this. And we're pretty hopeful that the U.S. Supreme Court would say, nothing we can do. These people were democratically elected. I guess one day things may reverse themselves and then they'll change the law if they need to. But in the meantime, nothing we can do. We left it up to the political branches. It's a political question. New York Times covering this issue and reporting on it over the weekend, or at least in recent days. What's the date on this? November 4th. I guess that was Friday. Wisconsin Republicans stand on the verge of total veto-proof power. In a 50-50 battleground state, Republicans are close to capturing supermajorities in the state legislature that would render the Democratic governor irrelevant even if he wins re-election. And isn't that what the founders wanted? Reed Epstein is the reporter on the piece, and it goes something like this. The 3 counties in Wisconsin's far northwest corner make up one of the last patches of rural America that have remained loyal to Democrats through the Obama and Trump years. But after voting Democratic in every presidential election since 1976 and consistently sending the party's candidates to the state legislature for even longer, the area could now defect to the Republican Party. The ramifications would ripple far beyond the shores of Lake Superior. If Wisconsin Democrats lose several low-budget state legislative contests here on Tuesday, which appears increasingly likely because of new and even more gerrymandered political maps, it may not matter who wins the $114 million toss-up contest for governor between incumbent governor Tony Evers, a Democrat, and Tim Michels, a Republican. These northern seats would put Republicans in reach of veto-proof majorities that would render a Democratic governor functionally irrelevant. Even though Wisconsin remains a 50-50 state in statewide elections, Democrats would be on the verge of obsolescence. The erosion of our democratic institutions that Republicans are looking to take down should be frightening to anyone, said John Adams, not the founding father, but might as well be, a Democratic candidate for state assembly from Washburn on the, one of the bays in Lake Superior. Which one is this? Let's see. We'll take a stab at this pronunciation. Chequamegon, maybe, or Chequamegon. I don't know. You tell me, Wisconsinites. Oh boy. Chequa, Chequa, Megon, Megon, Chequamegon. I don't know. Maybe. Is that how you would get? I don't know. That may be an Algonquian Native American pronunciation. It might be something like that in terms of the emphasis on the syllables. I'm sure I don't have the vowel sounds right. Okay, fine. Well, anyway, just another one of those things that the New York Times likes to smugly slip in there to show that they have total understanding of the local situation, which is easy to do in print, but not so easy to do verbally. Anyway, when you start losing whole offices in government, I don't know where they're going to stop. Remember, we were hearing from John Adams, a Democratic candidate for Assembly up there. This rural corner of Wisconsin, Douglas, Bayfield, and Ashland counties have become pivotal because it has 3 Democratic-held seats that Republicans appear likely to capture, 2 in the Assembly and 1 in the state Senate. Statewide, the party needs to flip just 5 assembly districts and 1 in the Senate to take the 2/3 majorities required to override a governor's veto. That outcome, terrifying, as Melissa Agard, a Democratic state senator and leader of the party's campaign arm in the chamber, described it, would clear a runway for Republican state legislators to follow through on their promises to eliminate the state's bipartisan elections commission and take direct control of voting procedures and the certification of elections. Wisconsin is not the only state facing the prospect of a Democratic governor and a veto-proof Republican majority in its legislature. North Carolina Republicans, who also drew a gerrymandered legislative map, need to flip just 3 seats in the state House and 2 in the state Senate to be able to override vetoes by Governor Roy Cooper, a Democrat. Governor Laura Kelly of Kansas, a Democrat in a tight contest for re-election, also faces veto-proof Republican majorities, as do the Democratic governors of deep red Kentucky and Louisiana. So I'm now brought, by the way, back to mind of the Elon Musk recommendation for voting here, saying split power between Democrats and Republicans because that checks the worst excesses of both parties. Well, I don't know. Does it? In Wisconsin, it looks like it may be the case that power is split between Republicans and Democrats, but it's not split evenly. It's split in a way that makes Democratic power in the state irrelevant and allows Republicans to do whatever they want with no check whatsoever from the other party. I mean, what about that? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a bad thing, right? Let's see. I think I might have to make that comment right now while we're doing it. And since no one's listening live anyway, it's okay. Let's see. Okay, so what was he saying? Shared power curbs the worst excesses. Okay. So we'll just throw that one out there as well. That's Elon's theory doesn't work in Wisconsin and then maybe also in North Carolina. Wouldn't that be something if after all of this, after the voting, it's not true in Wisconsin, North Carolina, Kansas, what else did they name here? And Kentucky and Louisiana. I mean, that's a lot of states. So how many was it? Wisconsin, North Carolina, I got to count now. Wisconsin, North Carolina, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana. 5. 10% of states not applicable. That doesn't matter. Splitting power, quote-unquote power between the parties ends up taking power completely out of one of the parties' hands. How interesting. Anyway, Wisconsin Republicans, since that's the focus here, who already have a vice-like grip on the legislature since enacting the nation's most aggressive gerrymander after their 2010 sweep of the state's elections, make no apologies for pressing their advantage to its limits. Mr. Michaels, the party's nominee for governor, told supporters this week, Republicans will never lose another election in Wisconsin after I'm elected governor. So what's the point of even having those elections, one might ask. Josh Barrow might, in fact, ask that question. Former Representative Reed Ribble, a Republican who served northeastern Wisconsin, said there's a lot of complaining about gerrymandered House or Senate Assembly seats, and there's some truth to that. But he added, at the end of the day, you'd be hard-pressed to come up with a district in rural Wisconsin that would elect a Democrat right now. Republican control of the Wisconsin legislature is so entrenched that party officials now use it as a campaign tactic. Craig Rosend, the GOP chairman in Douglas County, said that because Democrats had so little influence at the state capitol, voters who want to say in their government should elect Republicans. It's rather clever, isn't it? The majority caucus always determines what passes, he said. Having a representative that's part of the majority gets them in the room when where the decisions are made. Even though you're supposed to allow everybody into the room where the decisions are made, they just lose the vote. But apparently giving away too much, the Republican leaders admit that Democrats aren't even in the room anymore. Of Wisconsin's 33, and why would they be, right? If you have like open government laws where it was the sunshine laws, where it's actually mandated that Democrats literally be allowed to be in the room where the decisions are made, and you can't make decisions unless everybody's allowed in the room. Well, why not just get rid of that stupid rule? And if it's vetoed by the governor, F you, we override it, and now you're not allowed to be in the room anymore. That's the end of that. Of Wisconsin's 33 state Senate seats, 17 are on the ballot on Tuesday, including 2 Democratic-held districts that Donald Trump carried in 2020. The picture is similarly bleak for Democrats in the state assembly, where President Biden, who won the state by about 20,000 votes, carried just 35 of 99 districts. When you can win a majority of voters and have close to a third of the seats, it's not a true democracy, said Greta Neubauer, the Democratic leader in the state assembly. We are very much at risk of people deciding that it's not worthwhile for them to continue to engage because they see how rigged the system is against people in the state in favor of Republican politicians. And by the way, I mean, that's true and it's depressing, but note again the interesting opposite reactions of Republicans and Democrats. When Republicans tell people that the voting is rigged and it's hardly even worth participating anymore because of how rigged the Democrats are making it, they come out in record numbers and vote and overwhelm the majority of the population and who are Democrats or who would vote Democratic if they were out there voting and take control. Whereas when Democrats tell people, all right, where Republicans have managed to fix things so that the elections are rigged in their favor, and it's almost not worth voting anymore, the Democrats say, oh, yeah? Okay, well, then I guess I just won't. Okay, that's weird. That's odd that it comes out that way. As former President Barack Obama campaigned for Wisconsin Democrats on Saturday in Milwaukee, he addressed the implications of Republican supermajorities in the legislature, saying if they pick up a few more seats in both chambers, they'll be able to force through extreme, unpopular laws on everything from guns to education to abortion, Mr. Obama said, and there won't be anything Democrats can do about it. The Republican leaders of the Wisconsin legislature say they will bring back all 146 bills Mr. Evers has vetoed during his 4 years in office. Measures on elections, school funding, pandemic mitigation efforts. I mean, that's kind of over, but all right. Policing, abortion, and the state's gun laws if they win a supermajority or if Mr. Michaels is elected. Mr. Evers warned of hand-to-hand combat. That's a quote, to find moderate Republican legislators to sustain vetoes if he is reelected with a GOP majority. And I guess that's what you would need to do. Now, of course, they would say hand-to-hand combat, he's encouraging violence. Could happen. Katie barred the door, Mr. Evers said on Thursday during an interview on his campaign bus in Ashland. They're going to shove all this stuff down our throat. Remember, that's supposed to work, to scare people, right? And it's going to happen quickly and before anybody can pay attention. It could be bad. He's probably right about that. Mr. Evers predicted that Democrats would be able to narrowly sustain veto power in the Assembly. The state Senate, he said, is tougher. In northwest Wisconsin, the 3 incumbent Democratic legislators decided against running for re-election under new, more Republican-friendly maps. Under the old maps, Mr. Biden carried each of the districts, which are home to a large numbers of unionized workers in paper mills, mines, and shipyards. Under the new lines Republicans adopted last year, Mr. Trump would have won them all. Simply drawing the lines differently changes the outcome 100%. Isn't that interesting? Kelly Westland, a Democrat running for the state Senate here, spent Wednesday morning going up and down the long driveways of rural homes 15 miles south of Superior. It was grueling door-to-door outreach that illustrated the difficulty of introducing herself to voters as a new candidate in a new district that includes 3 media markets. You don't find a whole lot of folks here that are super jazzed about Joe Biden, Ms. Westland said, but you do find people that understand there's a lot at stake. Her pitch included warnings about what would happen if Republicans flip her seat and claim a supermajority. Few of the voters she met knew much about the candidates for the legislature, but they did express strong feelings about the national parties. The Democrats have to own up to a certain amount of things that are going on now, said John Tesarek, a retired commercial floor installer who would not commit to voting for Ms. Westland. I'm not totally certain I'm hearing them own up too much. Though they're not owning up to the kitty litter in the classroom thing, because that's not true. Are you hearing about that? The picture wasn't much different during early voting at city clerk's office in Superior. Anne Marie Allen, a hospital janitor, said she had voted for Mr. Evers and Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, the Democrat challenging Senator Ron Johnson, a Republican, but she said she had also backed Ms. Westland's Republican opponent, Romaine Quinn, because she liked that he had his toddler son in his commercials. And really, isn't that all you need to do? Mr. Quinn has spent 8 times as much on TV ads as Ms. Westland has. There was no smut in his ads, Ms. Allen said. You know how they cut down on other people? There wasn't that much of that. There was a little, but not that much. Chad France, a plumber, said he had voted a straight Republican ticket. I've been watching the Democrats bash every Republican, he said. They've been trying to make out every guy that's a Republican running for a position into a male chauvinist pig. I wonder why. Mayor Jim Payne of Superior, a Democrat, said Republicans were capitalizing on fissures in local Democratic politics between union workers and environmentalists. Labor and the environment are both very important, but it's leading to very real challenges. Mr. Payne said, they're breaking up. That's why you see more Republicans getting elected. The Republicans likely to head to Madison are far different from their Democratic predecessors. Nick Milroy, a moderate Democrat, won 7 terms in the Assembly and ran unopposed for a decade until he was reelected in 2020 by just 139 votes. His old district was Democratic in presidential years. Mr. Trump carried the new one by 2 percentage points. The Republicans who would replace him, the Republican would be Angie Sapik, S-A-P-I-K, Sapik perhaps, a marketing executive. During the Capitol riot in 2021, Ms. Sapik tweeted, "It's about time Republicans stood up for their rights. Rage on, patriots, and come on, Mike Pence." In a brief phone call, Ms. Sapik agreed to an interview, then ended the call and did not respond to any subsequent messages. Her Democratic opponent is Laura Gapsky, a Superior School Board member who said she had to call the police after receiving threatening calls when advertising that promoted Ms. Sapik's candidacy included her cell phone number. How do you like that? That's fun. Democrats here described an uphill battle against a better-funded Republican opponent, or all better-funded Republican opponents, with the political atmosphere colored by inflation, concerns about faraway crime, and an unpopular president. They also spoke of the difficulty of spreading their message in what was effectively a news desert. Mr. Adams, the Assembly candidate, is running in a district Mr. Trump would have carried by 4 points. Last week, Adams, an organic farmer who previously worked at small town newspapers in Minnesota and Montana, drove 2 hours each way to Rhinelander to be interviewed by a local TV station. Because we live in a low media environment up here, too many of us are getting our cable news and not enough are getting local news, he said. If Fox News is telling the story of Democrats, then we lose. And, it can happen, certainly. That's, in fact, that wraps up the article. We made it to the end of that lengthy piece in the New York Times, just in time to wrap up for the day. Although I'm not certain what's going to happen next because the power is out at Netroots Radio. I mean, I guess what happens next is the same as what's happening now, which is we're not broadcasting. So, okay, I guess there's that. So I guess I do know. I could tell you what Justice had on tap, and I'm pretty sure he'll be making that available as a podcast as well. I think that's the usual play. I think it's all recorded for podcasting purposes. So I guess we can use this time to slowly segue out of the time that we are usually allotted, but I guess we could just keep going forever because there's nothing they can do at Netroots Radio headquarters to kick us off, although there usually isn't anything that they would do anyway. But, well, I can tell you what he had on tap, I guess. Oh, no, I can't, because he's so busy working to get the power back on and scrambling to try and make do with what he's got, that there's no summary available for what's coming up on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy whenever he can get it to you, whether by podcast or otherwise. So, all right, well, we're at a loss in that respect. You'll just have to guess. I have some idea that it will be terribly interesting, informative, and engaging on this last day before what we used to call Election Day, coming up tomorrow. Okay, so we'll be back, and I think even when the power goes out there, we're able to, if not broadcast, then certainly record for podcast purposes, and we are backed up with battery backup that I believe gives us enough power to get through a 2-hour recording session anyway. So there's nothing they can do to take us off the air unless Elon Musk thinks of something, or there's some way of gerrymandering us so that we are overridden by a Republican supermajority in some way. I don't know. Anyway, interesting stuff today. We'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully Joan will be able to join us as well.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
You know, I don't want to cast doubt on whether or not Joan McCarter will be able to come, but it will be Election Day. But as we discussed last Tuesday, things are slow Tuesday during the morning, especially early in the morning in Pacific time, and they only heat up at night. But she may be needing to get some rest before having to circulate and make the rounds on election returns later on. We'll see you tomorrow.